Hello everyone. Today's art journal prompt is festive. Now I've decided that we're going to have this as a month-long prompt. December's incredibly busy for most of us, and the biggest problem for me some weeks is trying to think of a prompt that we can all do. So I thought by having a month-long prompt it would take the pressure off me during this busy time. Festive, you can interpret this any way you like. I know that a lot of you do not celebrate Christmas, and some of you just aren't really into it. So interpret it any way you like, any type of festivity. It does not have to be Christmas. I shall be doing a video as normal for, each week, each Sunday in the run up till Christmas. One falls on Christmas Eve, one falls on New Year's Eve. So I've got a couple of ideas for those. But this is festive number 1. Now I'm working on my normal piece of mixed media paper, which is 7 by 7.5 inches, and I've started off by drawing a pencil line across the middle of my page. And what I'm going to do first though is I've punched out with my hole punch a circle, and I'm going to add some, oh good grief, hang on a minute, let me just get rid of that. Try again. I've got my repositional glue stick here, and I'm just going to apply some glue and attempt to stick that down. Where do I want it? About there. And I just want to mask off that area there because that's going to be a moon. So this is just the Scotch removable stick. That's all that is. Let me just get rid of these glue flakes. And then what I want to do, I've got some white paint. This is just graduate acrylic, Daler-Rowney graduate acrylic on my mat. Hang on, let's just make sure I've got no bits there. And I've got a couple of paint brushes in some water here. And what I am going to do, and this is going to be difficult for you to see, I just want to add a layer of white paint up to that line there. And I'm just going to do 2 or maybe even 3, we'll see how many it takes, 2 or 3 thin coats until I've got this covered. I know that my page is already white, but if I didn't paint it, I think it would look odd at the end. I've actually got a plan in mind for once. So I'm going to give this a couple of coats, and I shall dry with my heat tool in between, adding a bit of water just to thin it down as and where I need it, because as I say, I just want a couple of thin coats. So there we go, that's the first one done. So I'm just going to go ahead and dry this, and then I shall add another coat, and then I'll be back. So that's had 2 coats of white paint, and I'm happy with that coverage. And what I'm going to do now is just flip my piece of paper over, and I've got some indigo, again Daler-Rowney graduate acrylic on my palette here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm using the same paintbrush, which is already in a pot of water that's turned white now, and that's absolutely fine because that's going to lighten my indigo paint very, very slightly. So I'm watering this down again, and I'm just going to add another thin coat going right up to that existing line as best I can. If you hear noise in the background, my window cleaner's here, so you might hear some noise outside. So yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to take that like that, there we are. And then when I get to this piece here, I'm just going to brush to the right where I've got that circle, pounce over the top just to stop any of that paint going underneath my mask, and then I'm brushing it out to the right there. And then I shall brush out to the left here, which will, as I say, just stop any unwanted paint seeping underneath. So I'm going to do the same and give this 2 coats of paint, drying in between, so 2 thin coats of paint, and as soon as I've done that, I shall be back. So I've given my page 4 coats of the blue paint in the end. 2 just wasn't enough, it was just too patchy, and I've dried it with my heat tool, and I'm now just going to keep my fingers crossed and peel off this mask and just hope that not too much paint has seeped underneath the big reveal. Well, there we go, that's not too bad. I've got a little bit around the edge, but I'm not too worried about that. So I'm just going to peel off this glue and just see if I can peel that bit off as well. I just wonder whether that's... I'm going to have a fiddle around with that and see if I can tidy it up. That's better. I'm happy with that now. Now I am going to turn this piece of paper over just so that I don't run the risk of getting any of that blue that still might be a bit damp on this white area here. What I want to do now is I've got one of these flat makeup sponges. I've run out of the triangle ones. I've got another pack somewhere. I don't know what I've done with them. And I've squeezed it into one of my, whoops daisy, spray bottle lids. And I've got some of the StazOn opaque cotton white ink. Bit grubby, but never mind. At least it's grubby with blue. And I am going to pounce my makeup sponge, and what I want to do is sort of try and create a bit of a shadow around the moon like this. I didn't want to do it with paint because I think if I used paint it would just be too opaque and not shadowy enough. So this is working. This is exactly the look that I was after, and so I'm going to keep pouncing until I'm happy with the coverage that I've got. Now I wanted to add some snow to my background, but the smallest snowflake stamp I've got is this one here, and it's just too big. It's just not going to look right for the rest of the page that I've got in mind. So I've decided I'm going to add some splatter with this Dr. P.H. Martin's pen white ink instead. So let's just give that a shake and put some on my little palette here. This is just a small chopping board that I'm using. And then I've got some spray water here. I'm just going to add a little drop of that. And then I've got a paintbrush. So let's just add a little bit of that and go for some splatter. Oh, that's better. I like that. So I'm going to let this dry and then we'll move on. I'm just going to set that to one side to dry, and I'm going to use this stencil here to add a tree to my background. This is the folk art stencil and it is called, what's it called? Curly Tree, 30610 folk art curly tree. Now I'm going to cover up the leaves because I don't want those. It's winter time, so there won't be any leaves on the trees. So I'm just going to grab some masking tape like this. And I'm just going to cover up any of those leaves just so that I don't stamp them or stencil them by accident. Now I've masked off the leaves and I think I want my stencil something like that. Now hang on, let me just tear off a piece of paper because I want to stamp my bird first in white. And I'm just going to just make sure I've got that positioned where I want it. I think I want it slightly off to the left. And I'm just going to put a piece of paper over there just so that I can stamp the bird first. Now, I've just changed my little pad over from the white and I need it again because I want to stamp my bird in white. So let me just put it back in again. This is what I'm doing. So I'm just putting it into the top, the plastic top like this, and then just squeezing it in like that. Right, okay, let's take the lid off again because I'm going to use this white ink again. Let's just check, where do I want that? Is that straight? Yep, that's fine. So I'm just going to pounce my bird. Like that. And then I'm going to give that a quick dry before I add the rest of my tree, I think. I've dried my bird and I'm just going to reposition my stencil over the top again, and then I've got another piece of masking tape here that I just want to place over the bird just so that I don't get any of the ink on the bird. Right, okay, and then the trunk of the tree is just a bit too fat down here, so I've got two pieces of card just so that I can sort of make it narrower. Let me just see, like that. So I'm going to hold that in place, and then I'm going to be using some of the Distress Oxide in peeled paint, and I've replaced my dabber with a new one. So I'm going to start off at the trunk first. Let's just do this first. And I know that trunks are normally brown and not green, but I just thought that brown isn't really going to show up very well on my page. So this is whimsical anyway, so I've opted for the Distress Oxide in peeled paint, which I thought would contrast really nicely with the rest of the page anyway. So let me just move up here a little bit, and then I shall move this mask away. Oh, hang on a second, let's try and get that nice and smooth. Right, and then I can move that out of the way and carry on stamping over the rest of the stencil. Continued stamping my image, and I'm happy with that, but I've got these areas here where I made my my trunk narrower, where I haven't got, the branches haven't gone all the way to the end, so I'm just going to finish that off with a stiff paintbrush like this. There we are, and then I shall do the same in this area here. And then I want to emboss the trunk, the tree. There we are. So I'm just going to stick the lid back on my peeled paint. And we know that Distress ink is really good for embossing. So I've got some clear embossing powder somewhere. Here we are. Give it a good shake, and I'm just going to put this over my tree, just to help that tree just stand out a little bit more. There we are. And then I can tip off the excess, give it a good thwack on the back, and then I'm going to heat set that with my heat tool. Just love how this is looking already. I want to add some decorations to my tree, so I've got a pencil with an eraser on the end, and I've chosen deliberately a brand new one, just so that I can get some nice crisp images. I want to add some baubles, and I'm using my embossing stamp pad. And where do I want to add these? Don't overthink it, Nino, just stick them on. So I'll have one there, one here, and so I'm just going to continue to stamp a few of these on. Where else do I want them to go? Maybe one here as well. Oh gosh, trying to think as to where I want them to go. One there. Got to have one here too, I think. Oh, I've got a croaky voice. And one there. And then I've got some bright red embossing powder. This is really cheap stuff. Whispers Opaque. I got this from, oh gosh, what's it called? Not Creative Expressions. A new craft shop that's opened in Evesham. Anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. And this was £1. So let's have a look and see if it's any good. I hope I don't ruin my page. I'm sure it'll be fine. Gosh, it's full to the absolute brim. And let's just try and get that over those areas that, where else did I put them? Can't remember where I've stamped my baubles. I've got a fresh piece of paper, by the way, as well, to tip off the excess on. Right, let's give it a good thwack and try and get rid of the excess. That's pretty good actually, so I'm going to tip the excess back in. I've got a tiny bit around here that I don't want. Is that a clean paintbrush? Can you see? Some here that's a bit stray. There we go, that's better. So I'm just going to heat set this. Just look at that turn glossy. I just love it when it starts to turn glossy. So I'm really, really happy with that. Now I'm going to see if I can find a very fine gold pen, just so that I can add some strings. So I've got this silver pen here, and because my baubles just look as if they're suspended in thin air, so I'm just going to add some fine lines like this, connecting my baubles to the tree. There we are. And I shall continue doing this all the way over. Now I want to add some snow with some embossing powder. I've got this embossing glitter here, Stardust embossing glitter, and I'm going to use my Versa marker pen. And what I am going to attempt to do, where do I want this to go? Like that, and I'm going to colour this area in so that I can emboss it. You won't be able to see what I'm doing, but this is the same as the embossing stamp pad, but in pen form. So I'm just going to continue doing this. Here we are. Won't take long. Keep fingers crossed I haven't missed any, because of course it's difficult for me to see it as well. There we are. There we go. And then I've got another piece of plain paper, because what I'm going to do now is tip my Stardust glitter. I've never used this. This is one of the ones that I got from the scrap store. It looks as if I've missed a little bit there. Let me just go over that again. Right, there we go. Keep your fingers crossed. Let's add some glitter. Tip the excess back into the jar, and I'm just going to heat set this and keep my fingers crossed that it looks like snow. Here it goes. Oh yes, can you see it sort of setting at that end there? That's just so beautiful. I just love that. And I think what I want to do is just add another thin line of ink just along this line here as well. Right, how do I want to do this? Because I don't want it to cover up my baubles. There we are. So I'm just adding a thin line all along this perimeter, just here, like so. There we are. Back out with the embossing glitter. There we are. Tip off the excess. Let's have a look at that. And yes, that's exactly the look that I was after. So I'm just going to get rid of any of these bits that I don't want. In fact, let's give it a good thwack on the back. So I'm going to tip the excess back into my jar and heat set this in the same way. So that's how that's looking. Can you see the sparkle? Oh, it's just so gorgeous. And I just want to add another bit of embossing powder just round the crest of the moon here. So I'm just going to go in like this with my embossing powder, embossing pen again, getting thinner at the edge. And I'm just going to repeat the process and tip on my embossing glitter. This is how my my page is looking, I just think it's adorable. It's just gorgeous. I just love all of these glittery details. Just really lovely. Now I want to use this fox and owl as my focal image. This is just a piece of a napkin, and all I've done is I've attached it to a piece of freezer paper. So I've taken the layers apart. It's a 3-ply napkin, so I'm just using the top ply, and ever so easy to do if you want to do this. It just makes it easier to cut out. So you take the layer of your napkin, obviously this is the whole piece, but you take it apart and just cut out the section that you want, place it onto your freezer paper. Am I in frame for you? Place it onto your freezer paper, shiny side up because that's the glue side. Then you want a piece of parchment paper which you will take and place over the top, and then you want your iron on a hot setting without any steam, and it will just take you just iron straight over the top of it, and it will take about 2 minutes, and then it will be glued to your freezer paper. So let me just move that out of the way. So I am now going to go off and fussy cut out my fox and my owl, and as soon as I've done that I'll be back. Cut my fox out, and I just want to add some embossing to my fox as well. I want to add a tiny bit to his nose. Going to add some black embossing powder, and also to his feet for 2 reasons. One, I just want it to shine and stand out and just have a little bit of detail, and secondly I've got some of the leaves from the napkin at the bottom of his feet where there was that trim on the bottom. You can see where I cut it out. Which way round was it? And so that will just disguise that as well, and just add a bit of detail to the fox. I'm not going to bother with the eyes because I just think they're too small. And I'm likely to make a mess of it, so we'll just keep it in those areas there. There we go, and again we can just flick off the excess, and I'm just going to heat set this. Can you see the sparkle on his nose? Let me just hold it up. Just look at the shiny nose and the shiny feet. I just absolutely love that. That has made such a difference. So I'm going to glue him on. I'm just going to use a Pritt stick for that. Let me just add some on this piece of deli paper here so that I don't end up with a mess. This is quite thin, so Pritt stick's fine for gluing this down. I've glued my fox down onto my page. Can you see the embossing powder, the shine that's added? I just love that. It just looks so adorably cute. I'm not going to outline the fox or the owl just because I think it will make it too harsh. It would just spoil it in my opinion. But I have gone around the bird, over the bird, just using my Jelly Roll pen, just because it wasn't quite bright white enough. I've used my archival ink just to go around the outside of my page. It's got my tape on the back ready to stick into my journal, so I've just edged that, and I've printed out a quote as well. Sometimes the smallest things take up the most room in your heart, and I just love that, and I can't decide whether I want my quote to go there or whether I want it up here. Oh, I really don't know. I quite like it up there, but I don't know, it just seems to be in the wrong place. So I'm going to have a fiddle around with that and glue it into my journal, and then I'll give you a close-up at the end. I decided to put my quote at the top in the end. I asked Sam's advice, and he said, Mum, I think it looks better at the top, and I'm inclined to agree, and I decided to stick it on a bit of an angle as well. I just think that's gorgeous. I love that page, and it was nice to use this stencil. I've had a couple of ideas for this stencil over the year, and just haven't got around to using it, and I just think it just works beautifully with that fox. So I hope you like that. As always, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up if you did, and of course, I love to hear your comments, so let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, I look forward to seeing how everybody else decides to interpret this prompt festive, and I'll be back next week with another festive page. Take care, see you all again soon.